Oh boy. Where do I begin? No Man's Sky. Probably one of the most controversially incredible games of all time that I have ever played. And while a lot of people out there, now I won't say most because I know there's a huge community behind this, a lot of people out there still hate it to this day, I have put nearly 1,000 hours into this game. Probably over now because I play both on PC and PS4. But I've put nearly to over 1,000 hours into this game and love it to death. And I want to explain what you may be doing wrong right now. But let me start with my story on how I was introduced to this game. 2 years ago, to the day, April 20th, 4/20, 2016, my cousin had his best friend over. And he had me over too. Since we live right beside each other, I came over. We got to talking about video games. We all love video games, and we still do to this day. He introduced us to No Man's Sky. The billions of planets, the quadrillions of planets, the quintillions of planets. When he mentioned these big numbers, I was already in love. We made plans, and I'm already jumping a little bit, but throughout the summer of that year, this was at the time, probably back in April, that we were seeing Bellari 5 and things like that. So the game was towards its final stages. But throughout the summer, the three of us planned on building PCs, and probably towards the delay. By the time the delay was announced, we had our PCs almost ready. But we were planning all summer long how to meet up, how to build bases, and how to get our career started on YouTube. Because of multiplayer, we knew there wasn't going to be base building on the first patch and on launch day. So we came up with this idea of staying in one single system and building a base in this cave and having these, if we could, chests and things inside this cave to keep stuff. Which we, of course, knew probably wouldn't happen, but we were just going to keep our ships as chests, pretty much, in storage areas. We were all going to have maximum ships space. And we would have this, I would have this hauler ship, pretty much, like we do in the game now. And it would have an invisibility cloak with maximum shield upgrades and a speed, and a little bit of speed with a cloak. And they'd have fighters that they could take out with maximum weaponry and take out people. And we'd have this stream to where we met up finally, and we'd build our base, and then we'd give away coordinates to our system to have people, hundreds of people fighting us on a live stream. Well, August came around, and none of it happened. I'll admit, we had our PCs ready, and for the first 10 hours, right after I got off my first system and took off into other systems, I was sorely disappointed for the first 10 hours. And I stepped away for the game for a month. I had 50 hours before I quit completely, and then I waited about a month after August, and just at the beginning of October, I started playing again, and I had watched, well, I didn't start playing again. I watched, finally, Star Wars 4, A New Hope, and at the end of the movie, I thought about how to make No Man's Sky the game I wanted without even having to wait. So, I logged back on, and I went to just one single system I had never gone to before. And I pretended that I was hunting these animals that I had hardly seen, and maybe that I would come across a legendary Godzilla kind of animal course, I knew animals like that weren't possible in the engine at that point, but I was role-playing and pretending that these things existed, and I was hunting, and I gave NPCs these pieces of dialogue that they didn't have, and pretended like I was talking to them when I really wasn't, and collecting bounties and pretending I had this fake money, and I did this for nearly 200 hours over the course of October and November. And finally, about midway through November, with about 150 to 200 hours into the game, I just finally burned out. And then the end of November came. The age of me and the factioning's awakening. And I mean, not by me, I mean the faction's awakening, pretty much. See, Foundation update at the end of November, the early December, it brought about this coordinate system to where we could find each other on a galactic map that someone had made. And factions began to colonize certain parts of space, and the beginnings of multiplayer began to come together. And with that update, I began to pretend I worked with my friends, a couple friends I had made in the community, and we created this faction system. And we pretty much pretended we had these bounties with the way I did it earlier, except now we'd all stay in this one system, and we'd pretend that we were doing these bounties for a faction we had made up, and we were moving up in the ranks. And I did this for about another 200 to 300 hours. And up until, well, more like 400, I'd actually say. And then, that was all throughout the end of, and beginning of, actually through all out winter. And throughout most of, when did, about midway through, spring too. And then Pathfinder came out, and we got base sharing, and we could build these bases and work together, and it was the second of multiplayer, and I knew something big was coming. I knew Sean was waiting to show us this thing. Of course, portals at that time were about all the rage. At this point, I'd had over about 600 hours in the game, and Pathfinder had just launched. And this game I knew was amazing. I didn't know what people didn't see about it, but there was something about this game that just hooked me, and it hooks a lot of people. And see, I'm not quite understanding as to why people can't see this. Maybe people expect more. Maybe, you see, this is why I love role-playing games so much. And before the point of No Man's Sky, I was a huge Fallout and Skyrim fan, and Elder Scrolls fan. I just adore having this the possibility of endlessness in a world map. And that's what hooked me with No Man's Sky, and of course they didn't give me everything Fallout and Skyrim and Oblivion and Fallout 3 and New Vegas and Morrowind gave me. But No Man's Sky gave it all to me. I just had to make it up. And see, maybe that's too much for people to see. Maybe that's too much work for people. Maybe that's why people love those games and don't really like No Man's Sky, because they don't want to make these things. They want developers to give it to them. But see, until a game like No Man's Sky succeeds with multiplayer and things like that, you aren't going to get that. No Man's Sky has left too much of a bad taste in the community's mouths that I don't think a company, EA, Bethesda, Cinemax, whoever, Activision even, no one will really try it. I don't think. Even with the Starfield leaks, which look amazing, it's only going to be a sub part of the game, and you're not going to have multiplayer and things like that. This is about the only open world sandbox we have. And yes, while Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous may give us some of this, they aren't going to have it the way No Man's Sky has it now. They aren't going to give us these worlds, trillions and billions and infinite worlds. They're going to focus on what they do best, and that's space sims, being space sims, and being fighter sims. That's what both of them do in some way, shape, or form. Even if something like Star Citizen takes this path as being a little bit more planetary focused, I think No Man's Sky pushed it to be that, and now they're not focused on that anymore with the failure of No Man's Sky. You see, I think No Man's Sky is going to be a one-of-a-kind game, and I don't think there's going to be anything like it. And I commend Sean for what he's done and giving me an experience with thousands of hours and pretty much infinite amounts of content to explore and play. And I want to explain as to, even now, with the ease of getting around the galaxy, with portals and everything, even now, this is still a great game. And what people are doing wrong is they're only scratching the surface. They're not focusing on what all you can do in this game. This game is large, and it's a puddle at the beginning. It's a very shallow puddle at the beginning if you can't break it. It's like water. It's like as if the ocean froze, and there was a thin layer of water over top all the ice that froze the ocean. And that's all people can see. But if you can break that ice, you find this living, breathing, beautiful universe to explore. And maybe that's too much to ask. I don't know. But I don't think a game like this will ever come out again. Not for a long time. You see, I heard this quote from another YouTuber. I don't remember who it was. The fact that this game exists now, 20 years ago, it would be considered science fiction in and of itself. This wasn't possible 20 years ago, and I'm almost certain in 20 years this might be the standard. That might sound crazy, but I don't know. Maybe procedural generation catches on, maybe it doesn't. All I know is that No Man's Sky is truly infinite and truly amazing, but you have to learn how to overcome these small obstacles. That's it for me. Thank you for watching.